Good afternoon, everybody. The next 45 minutes, I want to go on a quest. I want to face unprecedented change as one. Get you away from those computer screens and come with me and let's look at the forces of change rendering so much of what we know about capitalism obsolete. And then I want to uncover a communication platform that's so powerful and so strong that it's going to change the way you engage the head, heart, and hands of the people that matter most to you. How they think, how they feel, and how they behave. We're not just going to discover this platform, we're going to learn how to master it. And I promise you that what you learn today, you'll be able to apply not only in your career, but to any face-to-face relationship you have for the rest of your life. That's a tall order, but let's go together and see if we can make it happen. Now, if I'm going to join you on this quest, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Yesterday, you learned that I was an entrepreneur, that I built 2 ad agencies and a research firm. And today, I host a very successful podcast called Chatter That Matters. But my career began at a very early age where I first discovered my purpose. My first big boy job. Had a Samsonite briefcase with a combination locks. I was representing a local radio station on the West Island in Montreal, selling advertising. Oh, I had that briefcase full. I had everything you needed. Disc jockey tapes and posters and ratings and all the data needed to make a sale. Driving up one day, St. Charles Boulevard, Beaconsfield. I see this sign opening soon. I think, what a great cold call opportunity. I drive in. It's a restaurant, Southern barbecue called Rib Ticklers. I walk in and the place is just in shambles. It doesn't look like it's going to open for months. I managed to track down the owners, a couple. And I sit down with them and they give me like 10 seconds of their time. I'm just about to open my briefcase. And the husband says, listen, if you're here to sell advertising, we'd love to advertise. We have no money. We're all in. We borrow from our family or friends or credit cards maxed out. So I close up that briefcase and I start walking out the door and that briefcase now feels real heavy. I'm just opening the door and as I hear, hey kid, I turn around. Are you hungry? Yeah, I'm hungry. Well, we're just trying to test plate of ribs. Oven just got going today. Would you like to sample them? Well, I love ribs. In fact, you grew up in Montreal. My favorite rib joint was the Barbie Barn. Well, this place smoked the Barbie Barn. One of the finest rack of ribs I've ever eaten to this date. I thanked him and I left. Well, next day, I happened to kind of show up just around the same time and just in time for the Southern fried chicken and biscuits. And by the third day, we'd become pretty good friends and I somehow or other managed to convince him to buy a $300 package of advertising. 30-second ads and some safety bumpers. And I did everything I could. I was vested. I mean, these were now for my friends, and I got the best copy. I snuck it in the drive time. I was so excited about this campaign. I show up opening night. I walk in the door, and nobody's there. All I can see is the fear in the eyes of the owners and a couple of friends. And I walk up, I don't even know how to say anything. I mean, they entrusted me with this advertising. Then I heard the door open. And I heard it open again. And within 25 minutes, that place was slammed. And I started busking tables and doing anything I could to help. More than once, I asked people, how did you hear about it? They said, we heard about it on the radio. And I knew that was my life's calling, to connect buyers and sellers, to find ways to put things together, to create commerce, to create opportunity. Well, since those early days in radio, through my world in advertising and research and speaking at conferences all over the world in my podcast, I can tell you that through all of this, only one word matters. This word, in fact, is the oxygen of all human endeavor. This is the only path to persuasion, and that word is attention. So you need attention to teach, motivate, coach, to lead, to advise, to collaborate, to create, to mentor. Attention is the essence of making anything happen. But the challenge is that most ideas, brands, careers, businesses today are starving for attention. And it's because of the forces of change. First one is, we're living in the age of noise. There's just too much and too many chasing a finite amount of time. It's a math problem. The average person is drinking content from a fire hose, and so much of what we put in, our PowerPoints, the insights we've uncovered in an audit, our strategies for going forward get spilt on the floor because of the age of noise. Second thing is this mobile phone, which is really a mobile wand. People now spend 1 in 7 days on it. Well, how's that possible? Because the world's within arm's reach of desire. I can aggregate and curate and validate. I could shop. I can navigate. I can do anything I want on my phone. It's actually changed the way I behave. I mean, because of the phone, I shop a different way. I think a different way. I even post the most intimate things. This is something I saw recently on the web. Dear mother-in-law, you've treated me mean for the last 30 years. Talk down to me. Now I get to pick your nursing home. Anything and everything is out there. But what's happened because of the mobile phone, and if you listen quietly all around you, it's this thing called the platform economy. It's being built over conventional capitalism. These apps that ride like Trojan horses into your phone and absolutely compromise and compress the supply chain. I mean, who owns a customer nowadays? Is it Uber Eats or McDonald's? Bookings.com or Hilton Hotels? Everything's out on this platform. Everything's going to subscription economy. And this has only just begun. Yet within 20 years, the market value of platform economy is over $9 trillion. Other forces of change? Automation, nanotechnology, CRISPR that's reinventing the DNA. The world is getting reinvented as we watch. And what's accelerating all? It's this horrible virus that's infected our psychology, our economy, and the way we do business. And throughout all of this, and I'm not just talking about Canada, the United States, I mean, China, anywhere else I've been in the last couple of years, the entire marketplace has changed. The middle ground has collapsed. There's no status quo. In fact, status quo is the serial killer of business, as a good friend of mine, Joe Jackman, says. Organizations have to make a choice to either make things happen or to wonder and watch what happens. Now, if you stay there and wonder what happens, and you're sitting there thinking things are going to change, what's happening is you're starting to lose your point of difference. You're starting to all look the same. You're being commoditized. And we know we're being commoditized when suddenly price becomes the primary tiebreaker. When concepts of loyalty, and we've done your business with you for years, suddenly goes to, can we do anything with your fee? Those are the people wondering what happens. But on the other side, there's been an extraordinary renaissance in companies that know how to make things happen. Find a way to differentiate yourselves. Find a way to move from being transactional to transformational. And that's what you're trying to do with this whole concept of foresight. Instead of just counting the past, it's all talking about how can our profession help individuals, help clients, help the companies we lead access the future. And to do that, you have to get their attention. And I'm going to tell you about where I had an epiphany 20 years ago, where it changed the entire way I did business, where it brought me a sense of how to communicate in a way that completely changed my life and my business, and I know it'll change yours. I want to take you back to 20 years ago. And I'm sitting in a conference, 1,000 people in the audience. And on the stage, and this was a day of pinstripe suits and proper ties and suspenders, the speaker walks on stage with hiking boots and a pair of hiking pants and a sweatshirt. And he drags out a coat rack with a little hat on top. It all comes to the whole essence of it when he talks about the need to get away sometimes, to unplug from the grid. And he said he used to come down the stairs every day on the way to work, and every once in a while, this hat on this coat rack would start talking to him. It was a hat, I learned, that his grandfather had given him, because his grandfather taught him to love hiking. They used to go on these hikes and find trails they'd never be on. So every once in a while, that hat would talk to him, and he realized it was time to just get away. And he said he put on that hat, and then he put on his hiking boots. He said, I hated my hiking boots in the city. My toes gnarled up. The pavement, the sweat. But then he'd get off and get out in the trails. The next thing you know, his boots would breathe, and it's almost like nature was coming through it. One day he's talking about being on this glorious June day. We've all been in these days where the greens are green, where you walk in the sun and it's delayering because it's warming your body, but in the shade it's still chilly. And he's walking along. And he says it was so beautiful, he's so at peace with nature. He could hear birds singing in the thermals. He said, I was just decluttering my mind. It was this nature and meditation coming together. But he's on a trail he's never been on. As he starts navigating, he starts hearing things and he's smelling things in the air, and he turns the corner and he stumbles upon a rock quarry. And he said the juxtaposition from listening to birds in the thermals, the most beautiful, beautiful smells of nature, to this half a mountain being defaced and people running up and down it looking like ants and the dirt and the acid in the air. But he has to get through this rock quarry to get to where he wants to go. So as he's walking through, he goes up and he sort of stumbles on the first person. They kind of break the ice. He says, hey, man, what are you doing down here? The guy looks up and the biggest eye roll he can. He says, buddy, we're cutting rock. It's a rock quarry. He's going along and runs into another person, same question, same eye roll, same answer. Like, really? Do you have to ask what we're doing? Just as he's getting out of the rock quarry, he sees a woman with shining eyes. She's almost skipping, but she's doing the exact same job. So he just decides to go back to the standard question and says, so what's going on? What are you doing here? She says, well, I'm part of a team. We're building a great cathedral. Now, I'm sure that story never happened because he repurposed one of the oldest stories known to man. But boy, did that story resonate with me. See, I was in the advertising business. And I wanted to know what was the difference between the three people, two doing the same job, very transactional, and one feeling it was much more transformational. And I realized that she was part of a bigger story. Someone had presented what they were creating together, what they're facing together. Someone might have talked about the cathedral being a sanctuary or maybe a place for spiritual or where the town would gather. But regardless, every time she cut a rock, she imagined what she was creating. She was part of something bigger. She had a higher purpose. And I realized then that I'd been doing a disservice to my clients. I'd been getting my clients, consumers and customers to buy product and service, but did they really ever buy in? And I realized then how important stories were to get people from what they were doing today to what really mattered. So I started looking at stories, and the more I thought about it and observed, the more I realized this is the communication platform that is strong, that's flexible, and is powerful. I mean, you think about stories when you were a kid and how much you and your parents connected with it. Or a ghost story around a fire where you felt goosebumps and you swore somebody walked behind you. Or something like Uncle Tom's Cabin that changed beliefs. Sometimes a story is so powerful it can change cultures for decades. October 14th, 1948, 3 years after World War II, humans had yet to fly at the speed of sound. If I could take you back then. Oh, half of you over there would say, I want nothing to do with it. That's God's country. The pilot would never survive. You're going to poke a hole in the atmosphere and the earth will collapse. And the other half had an appetite for change. They wanted America to lead the space race. They wanted to believe in engineering and future and technology. October 14th, 1948, Chuck Yeager gets out of bed. He's the pilot. Broken ribs, horsing around a couple days before, but he doesn't want to tell anybody he's injured because he wants the game ball that day. And here's what he said in his autobiography of this moment in history. I got up that day and I knew it was our day. I knew it was the day I was going to let the plane fly. I taxied off and took off. Oh, it was such a beautiful morning. I just put the nose up and I felt like I was riding a bird. And I pushed her, and the more I pushed her, the smoother it got. I looked down at the gauge and I looked up, and then I heard something we'd been dreaming about for years. The mechanics, the engineers, everybody that were working together, and that was the sonic boom. We broke the sound barrier. The gauge absolutely confirmed it. Mach 1, for the first time ever, we were flying at the speed of sound. But it was a perfectly paced speedway. It was a poke through Jell-O. Grandma could be sitting beside me sipping lemonade. Later, much later, I realized that the barriers had never been in the sky, but always in our minds. Well, for decades after in NASA, when engineers said, it can't be done, it's impossible, people would come back and say, are those barriers in the sky or in your minds? See, stories are so powerful that you can actually change your brainwaves. I'm going to do an experiment with everybody listening. I'm going to mess with your brainwaves. So let's say Jay Goodis and I, and Jay is a good friend of mine, and every Saturday morning we get together for a cup of coffee. And I walked into the coffee shop and I said to Jay, how's it going? It's great. He said, what'd you do last night? I said, I had something to eat. Well, Jay's a smart person. You're all smart. Every one of you knows by just me saying I had something to eat, you decipher the words and know that I had dinner. But I'm also pretty boring. What if I walked in and say, Jay, remember that bar we were in last year, that with the big gold lettering? Well, it's open again, and I was going by last night, I was starving, and opened the door, and it was just, I had lots of energy going on and sounds, and I probably should have gone home, but I was hungry, so I found a seat at the bar. Next thing you know, I had one of those cold draft beers, the Chips of Ice. You know how I love my cold craft beer. The waiter comes over and says, what do you feel like eating? I said, I'm starving. I mean, you must have a good burger. He said, well, we have a fine burger, but we have a special today called beef bourguignon. Have you ever tried that? I said, beef bourguignon? My grandma used to make it. Yeah, so bring me the beef bourguignon. I'll trust you. This thing rises. It looks like a bathtub on the table. Piece of crusty bread. The gravy is so rich and dark, and chips of fried mushrooms, and those little onions that you just so sweet and they pop in your mouth, and the meat, it just fell off the fork. When I tell you a story of that beef bourguignon, a lot of things have happened to you. It's mirror imaging going on where you imagine yourself going into that bar. Your motor cortex is fired. Some of you actually walked in with me, sensory. I bet you some of you are hungry. I got you to leave the screen and the desk and the backdrop and everything you've been dealing with and come with me because you were part of my story versus telling yours. So I started to realize that storytelling was something, and if I was going to master it, I had to learn. And I thought this was going to be complicated. What I'm going to tell you in the next 10 minutes is the simplicity of storytelling. Then we're going to apply it to brands, and then we're going to apply it to your business of doing business. So in the next 20 minutes, you're going to walk away and become a master storyteller and spend the rest of your life perfecting that craft. Now, to get my learning, I talked to Chuck Lorre, who met, 2.5 Men, and Mike and Molly. Spent some time with him in Banff Film Festival. Went over to Oxford and listened to some TED Talks on it. I studied it, and I found out that stories are incredibly simple to put together. First thing they do is they start with a protagonist, a hero. If you've watched The Hunger Games, or imagine any story, there's always the hero in the story. And very often at the beginning, the author establishes this as just a very normal person. They have warts like we do. They might have a unique skill. This one, Katniss Evergreen from The Hunger Games, she could hunt with arrows. She hunted squirrels to keep her family alive. But it's just a normal person. That could be my sister. That something happens in the story. It's a big knock at the door, a trigger, and her whole life turns upside down. In this case, her sister's being chosen to fight in the Hunger Games. She knows she'll never survive it, so she decides to step in for her sister and fight for her life. And then the story gets interesting. It's the challenges. Now, in this case, this Challenges and Quest was 3 books long and 4 movies. But you stuck with it. A lot of people, it's one of the most popular movies and books. And along that way, we fall in love with the quest because there's competitors to beat, challenges to overcome, life and death situations. And then you get helped along the way. There's always the enabler, the fairy godmother, the Yoda that comes along to help the protagonist, and ultimately it ends the desired outcome. Simple quest. It's called The Hero's Journey. I'll tell you, if you love Marvel comic movies, I hate to spoil your next one. Starts off with the retired superhero. I've done all I can for the planet Earth. I'm not going back to battle anymore. It's time for my retirement. It's a Big Mac monster shows up in the next scene, the trigger. I don't care. Monster takes down half of Gotham. I don't care. Finally, the superhero says, I better suit up. There's nobody that's going to stop this person from destroying our planet. Someone suits him up, M or someone else. It helps them to get geared up, or she get geared up. They go into battle. First battle with the superhero, they get just beaten to almost death. They are so overpowered. This monster is the biggest you've ever seen. And by the end of the movie, we know what happens. They save the planet for another day. We go to Marvel comic movies time and time again. If you love rom-com, first scene, the couple, beautiful people, but one is the most perfect creature on the planet, and one is the most awful creature. Why are they getting married? Second scene, a wedding planner, somebody moves in. Now that's the person they should be marrying. At the end of the movie, you know that's what's going to happen. But we watch it time and time again because we love a story pattern. We're wired for stories. But the thing that's fascinating, the thing that's going to be your aha moment in this presentation is the why. What is it that makes somebody go on a quest and yet is believable enough It's believable enough that you say, I could buy into that. I'm going to go with them on that journey. Well, it really comes down to 4 things. Now, this is going to be recorded, so you're going to have a copy of this. But just in your mind, think of every story that you followed. Very often, people will leave their existing situation to find more safety and security. They want to protect what they have, things like Home Alone. Love and belonging. It's not just love, romantic love. It's belonging, connected, being together. We go on quests to find purpose and treasure and achieve goals, and also for self-actualization. So I asked myself, after going through this sense of studying it, can it work for brands? Can it work for professional service firms? Can it work for people in sales? Can this concept of this story arc, the protagonist, the trigger, the challenges, the competitors, the enablers, all the desired outcome, and these 4 basic needs, can they come together in a platform to have a brand get the attention they desperately need? What do you think? Well, if you got 60 seconds, let's take a look.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. And when I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. And I would walk 500 more just to be in the middle of the 1,000 miles to fall down at your door.
Now, I don't know how Budweiser managed to weave their brand in at dawn, somebody drinking a beer, but great ad. I mean, the hero is the dog. What a great normal life. I mean, could you do better than Clydesdales being your best friends and an owner that loves you so much? The knock is that suddenly dog gets lost, abandoned. Feel for it. What a quest. Pouring rain, seeking shelter. Dog's just about to get home. Competitor arrives, the wolf that wants to eat the dog, and then the enablers, the Clydesdales, ride to the rescue. Fantastic story. By the way, if you loved it, chances are you love Lassie Comes Home. Toy Story 3, where Woody gets abandoned, and thousands of others that follow the same plot. But the question I have is, what's Budweiser doing in that story? See, it's an interesting thing about stories is you can engage the audience, you can get them to pay attention, but if you don't have a role in that story, you're really doing yourself a disservice. See, what I found out with brands, and I'm talking about you, each of you is a brand representing your firm, as a leader or somebody advising the firm, you're never the hero. Now, you could be the smartest person in the room. You could have uncovered insights in an audit or a report. You could have found out this perfect secret sauce going forward. It doesn't matter. You're never the hero. See, in great storytelling, the hero are the people that matter most to you. Could be your client, could be your employees, could be influencers. They're the people that matter most. I'll give you an example. Now, I don't know about you, but I see a lot of advertising about who's got the fastest network, who's the best, who's got the best this and best that. Frankly, I want to stick a fork in my eye. No disrespect if you work for either of these companies, but I don't care about your network. I only care when it matters to me. So I'll show you what a company did about this technology company in France. How many of you are sports fans out there? Really? I'm going to tell you about a fan that I think would even surpass your passion. 30 years, he's never missed his home team play. He's gone to the stadium for 30 straight years. He lives in a little apartment in Paris. In this little apartment in Paris, he's managed to carve out a shrine. And in this shrine, he's got memorabilia. Get him talking about your team, his team, and he could go on for hours. 30 years, he's never missed a game. But the sad part of this story, he's never seen them play.
Bah non, il n'y a pas un matin où je me lève où j'y pense pas. Hein. Pour moi, le foot, c'est l'OM. Voilà. C'est à moi, c'est ma vie, c'est mon club, c'est dans mes tripes. Alors, ma femme et ma fille, elles se foutent souvent de moi, mais Et depuis 30 ans, j'ai pas raté un match à domicile. Pas un. En même temps, j'en ai pas vu un seul. Et pourtant, je me souviens de tout. Hein. De tout. Je me voyais dans la tête de Basile Boli en 93 contre Paris. Les filets qui tremblent, le stade qui chavire. La joie des joueurs. Vous ne pouvez pas savoir ce que c'est d'être aussi près de vos idoles et de ne pas pouvoir les voir. Et puis un jour,
Don't tell me about your mobile technology. Show me why it matters. See, the thing about storytelling is I want you to play a role in every story that you're doing business with. And that role is the Yoda. You can say, I'm the CEO, I'm the CFO, I'm advising my clients. No, what you're doing is you're helping each and every person that matters to you get to where they want to go. See, everybody is on one or several quests in life. We're all looking to fulfill unmet needs. And it's the people that help us get to where we want to go are the people that get our attention. So I started really testing this model. I said, okay, I get it working for technology, but I want to pick a commodity. So I went and looked at water. Now, for 30 years, Pepsi was one of my clients, and I didn't like Evian. They're a pretentious brand. They had this Parisian accent, glass bottle. They're sourced from the Alps. But what really I didn't like is they could get probably 60 or 70% more money for their brand than Pepsi could for their Aquafina. They were very good at what they did. But then the world changed, and they didn't change their conversation with the consumer. They still talked about who they were versus why they mattered. And next thing you know, their product was getting commoditized. So Evian decided they better do something different. And what they did was brilliant storytelling. Instead of talking about who they are and the glass bottle, they talked about why water matters. Water is the fountain of youth.
I'm the lyrical gangster. Big up the crew in the area. Still love you like that. No, we don't die. Yes, we multiply. Anyone press me, the fire is sing. Act like you know we go. I know what both don't know. Touch them up and go. Oh, this is changing. Here come the upstepper. I'm the lyrical gangster. Pick up the crew in the area. Still love you like that. Here come the upstepper. I'm the lyrical gangster. Excuse me, Mr. Officer.
You know, you talk about attention being the oxygen. I imagine that most water commercials will get about 11 downloads. That had over 200 million views. People started using apps to create their own Evian baby pictures because of a very simple insight. It wasn't about the water, it's about how water makes you feel. And I want you to start thinking about it again. I took it to another industry. This is pre-COVID, but it was an absolute shambles, which is the travel industry. Everybody was trying to get you to book direct, the airlines, Airbnbs, Booking.coms, Hilton.com. How could a travel agent survive? Well, this one got a 15% increase in sales and the attention of an entire nation because they stopped talking about what they do, transactions, I book tickets, and focus more on what happens when you travel.
Faktisk har danskerne 46% mere sex på ferier sammenlignet med hverdagen. Så for at hjælpe den faldende danske fødselsrate, vil Spis opfordre alle danskere til at tage på en romantisk storbyferie. Det hjælper selvfølgelig også lidt på vores fremtidige forretning. Men er det ikke motivation nok at gøre det for Danmark, så har vi lavet en lille konkurrence. Book din rejse med vores ægløsningsrabat. Fyr den af. Bevis, du har undfanget et barn, og vind 3 års forbrug af babyudstyr og en børnevenlig ferie. Men hvad nu, hvis du allerede har gjort din pligt? Eller hvis chancerne for en undfangelse ikke er særlig høje, jamen så se på det sådan her. Det handler ikke kun om at vinde. Det handler om at være med. Deltag i konkurrencen. Do it for Denmark.
Do it for foresight. Oh. Anyways, and I want to continue with 2 more ads, and then we're going to really start focusing on face-to-face, which is where most of your world operates. I looked at the pharmaceutical world, and every time I listen to a pharmaceutical ad, it makes me nervous when they start talking about all the side effects, may cause this, may cause that. And it just troubles me. Well, this pharmaceutical company said, let's not try to be the hero. Let's not try to make it the efficacy of our drug. Let's talk about it. We're all in together, and what we're in for is to get patients to feel well. If you want to connect with people, focus on what matters most to them. And in this case, it's people getting well. So what happens, though, if you don't have the budget of Steven Spielberg or big production dollars for an ad campaign? Can the concept of storytelling elevate your value and relevance? Well, let's take a look first in product development. How many people out there have vacuumed? Have you vacuumed? Of course you've vacuumed. And here's what happens when you're vacuuming. You're going along the stage, and you catch something. Right? You catch something, what do? You smile. What did I get? You're looking around, making sure the hamster's still there, but you're feeling that you've done something. Well, the vacuum cleaner business for years was owned by Hoover and Electrolux. All they talked about is their suction power. The ads would show a golf ball racing across the room because of the power of this vacuum cleaner. Well, James Dyson, an inventor, first of all, didn't think their product was very good, but more importantly, he focused on what really mattered. And what he saw was that as we were moving more into this typing and things going in the cloud and not doing things with our hands, not seeing the output of our work, that vacuuming was something we felt very proud about because we could see how the carpet moved and we could see sounds of things getting picked up. So what he did to tell his story, what he did to be part of that journey of purpose and feeling I'm doing something, he made a vacuum cleaner with a clear canister so you could see the dirt. Now he's worth about $10 billion. I was working with 500 entrepreneurs at a conference, and what I do at the end, which I'm going to do with you, is invite you to ask questions, but frame them, and here's a situation I have. How would storytelling work? I want to show you the model in real time. Well, here's an example. So I asked that question. Room packed, and in the very back, this tall sort of, because in the lights, it's just sort of a silhouette, almost looked like a character out of a Tim Burton movie. And he puts his hand up, and I go, yeah, can I help you? He says, well, loved your presentation, but I don't think you can help me. Not what I wanted to hear, but I said, well, why? He said, well, we're in the custom front door business. I said, yeah. He said, well, my grandfather started the business decades ago, and he was a carpenter, but really wanted to do craftsmanship work. So he just focused on front doors. I said, yeah, okay. My dad took it over and built a little sawmill. We have a showroom. We had contractors selling it. Really took off. I said, fantastic. Maybe you don't need me. He said, well, my sister and I bought it last year, and we don't know if we're going to make payroll by the end of the year. This room just got quiet. I mean, it's very tough for an entrepreneur to share that pain with all these people that are successful. I said, why? What's going on? He said, well, imports. They're importing doors from the Far East that are well, they can price them for less than it costs us to make one. So I thought for a minute. I said, well, are they the exact same doors? And then he stood back, his shoulders got back, and he dropped the F-bomb, which I won't, but he goes, no, ours are solid oak. We use hand-mounted hinges, the finest locks. So I stood there and I looked at him and I said, well, then stop selling doors. And the audience just looked at me like, what? We paid this guy to come out. This is his family business. Your only advice is to get out of it? I said, you're not in the door business. I said, if that old couple comes into your showroom, imagine their journey, their quest. Imagine that as we get older, safety and security become very important. Remember, one of those triggers. We start hearing more about the crime. We start seeing the yellow tape, the police sirens, the neighborhoods change. Well, when they buy one of your doors, they're buying a drawbridge. When they shut that drawbridge, nobody gets in because it's solid oak and has the finest hinges. Now, if it's a millennial that just bought $1 million fix-up and they're dreaming what they're going to do with this house and they don't have a lot of money for renovations, you're their first impression. When you put that door in, every time they go in and out, every time they hear the click, every time somebody comes in, they're going to imagine and see the possibilities. How about framing it as a leader? So Steve Jobs had a lot of trouble convincing his engineers to compete with the Sony Walkman. You remember the days where people used to run with a Walkman and a CD player and had all the DJ booth right in it? Well, Steve Jobs hated technology. Steve Jobs said, my parents don't know how to program their VCR. Why are we putting all this stuff on it? Eventually, one day, he got really mad, and he took a flipboard, drew a triangle, a rectangle, and a circle, and said, make me that. They still couldn't understand. He says, listen, it's not about a technology. Your role is for music lovers, put 1,000 songs in their pocket. Put 10,000 songs in their pocket. Change the conversation from what you do. We make technology that's really cool to why it matters. Because anywhere I go in the world, I can listen to the music or podcasts that I love. Professional services, IBM. Too big to fail. Well, they almost failed. So they had a complete rethink of the business they were in, from selling stuff and big computers and thinking that people would be IBM for life, to realizing we have to get into the service business. It's not about what we do and how fast your computers are. It's about, can we make people more competitive? And they shifted the entire conversation from IBM to Watson being your best friend.
Hey, Dad, come meet the new guy.
The new guy? What new guy?
I hired some help. He really knows his wine.
This is the new guy?
Hello, my name is Watson.
You know wine, huh?
I know that you should check Vineyard Block 12.
Block 12.
My analysis of satellite imagery shows it would benefit from decreased irrigation.
I was wondering about that.
Easy boy. Nice doggy.
What do you think?
Not bad.
So let's bring it home and talk about facing unprecedented change as one. And I love what you're doing with Foresight, right? Because it's all about future moves on the chessboard, isn't it? How you're going to manage data, what we're going to do about automation. I mean, the mission critical decisions. And I can't think of a better profession than yours to apply storytelling to drive the value and relevance of what you do. I mean, who's going to tell and advise and make decisions, and what type of automation do we bring in? Do we continue to outsource manufacturing or use 3D printing internally? The big mission-critical, meaty decisions that have to happen over the next 10 years are going to require incredible analytics ROIs, scenario planning. Data, which everybody says is the lifeblood of business, the lifeblood of the future, but it's a delicate dance you're on between privacy and data, and where we add value to the consumer and where we feel like we're invading who they are. It's your profession that's going to have to be the ones that holds that rudder and says, let me be the ones that bring in the right governance. Because you can't give that to an area of the company that's become thirstier and thirstier for that data. It has to be with someone that's going to be unbiased and pragmatic. How about business without boundaries? I don't need shipping lanes anymore. I don't need major water routes, trains. Everything's going up in the clouds. Canada's got a free trade agreement with 1.7 billion people. The only G7 country to have free trade with all other members. The world's going to come after us. We're going to go after them. Again, who's going to be the enabler, the advisor? Who's going to be the leader that makes those decisions? I keep looking at that, understanding whether you're going to be disrupted or being disrupted, who the new competition's going to be, talent acquisition and retention, working remotely. All the rules of capitalism are being turned upside down. And we're going to need the Merlin, the fairy godmother, the enabler, the Yoda, to help people get to where they want to go. And that is your role, is helping people get to where they want to go. Speaking of going, I'm at the end of my quest with you today. But I want to leave you with one final story. If I can, I want to take you back to the 1930s. British Parliament, this is a lowly backbencher. His name is Winston Churchill, out of favor by both parties. His own party didn't like him because he was boorish and he was loud, and the opposition, all they could talk about is the disasters that he was running the Navy in World War I. But Churchill was a visionary. And you could see the then Prime Minister at the time thinking that status quo was the okay place to stand. And they were dealing with political change of the same magnitude we're dealing with in terms of capitalist change. Politically, obviously the brown shirts forming in Germany, fascism in Italy, communism in Russia, Japan's thirst for new resources, and that country called the United States becoming a superpower. One day Winston Churchill stood up in Parliament. He waited till all eyes were on him. And then he looked right at the Prime Minister and said, history will prove this Prime Minister is wrong in these matters, for I and the people of England know it is so, because together we will write the history. That word together comes up like it did in your logo. So what do we learn in our quest today? What's in our knapsack? Attention is the oxygen of all human endeavor. The only way you're going to find value and relevance, the only way you're going to elevate your profession, the only way you're going to make foresight and amplify it is by having the attention of the people that matter most to you. But it's challenging. We're living in the age of noise. People are spending 1 in 7 days on their phone. The platform economy is trying to use apps to compress the whole supply chain and take over that relationship. Automation, nanotechnology, 3D, CRISPR, all this change is a distraction. But within it, every career, every client you do business with, every company you work for is going to have to make a choice. Am I going to make things happen, or am I going to watch and wonder what happens? And your role is a very simple one. Be the Yoda. Be the profession that helps people make the mission-critical decisions, that helps rally the culture, that helps doing the scenario planning and the ROI to help people get to where they want to go. Because when you stop telling your story and what you do and focus on telling theirs, when you move from transaction to transformation, from counting the past to accessing the future, when you tell those stories, well, those that tell those stories, they rule the world. Thank you.